Very happy to have on the show our friend, United States Senator Bernie Sanders, representing the beautiful state of Vermont, a tireless progressive activist living in a time of plutocracy, Senator. We're in actually a plutocracy. The actual definition is here.
Congratulations.
Right?
We
It's not
made
just
it,
an
Dean.
oligarchy.
We've been working on it for years, but finally we made it. Yes.
This is it. I went through the definition on my show 2 days ago. I explained the difference between oligarchy and plutocracy. The oligarchy is a few people. Plutocracy is just a few wealthy people controlling things. And that's what we have. And I saw you posting about it, and then you've been yelling about this for years. What do we do now? The billionaires are buying elections. They're 150 million plus for the inaugural committee. There's no limit. It's all legal.
Dean, you're giving my speech here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. I'm being groomed. I'm moving to Vermont.
All
this
right.
is my future.
All right. Let's back it up, because
Sure.
I think, not everybody is as well versed in this stuff as you are. And we need to really take a deep breath, understand how quickly things are moving and what, in fact, the current realities are. So, number one, as you've indicated, we right now have more income and wealth inequality than in the history of the United States of America. Okay? And the gap between the very rich and everybody else is getting wider. So today, 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Got it? That's one reality.
Yep.
You got 800,000 people who are sleeping out on the street. Part of that reality. People can't afford housing. They can't afford to feed their families. That's reality number one. But the other reality is that three people, that is our friends, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, and Mr. Zuckerberg, three people are now worth almost $1 trillion, owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society. And the point that I want to stress to the viewers is this is a very, very big deal. And don't think it's not a big deal because it's not discussed on NBC or CBS or Fox. It is a huge deal. And this is not the kind of world, kind of economy, kind of America that we want. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, in terms of the economy, the theory of capitalism isn't it great? Everybody's competing against each other. I got a product, you got a product, you're going to compete against me, I'm going to drive prices down, and the consumer makes out well, right? Is that the theory? Well, guess what? That ain't happening. What's happening is that in sector after sector, a handful of very, very large corporations control what is produced and the kind of prices that we pay. And I'll give you one example again that is not talked about enough, but to me, Dean, it's absolutely unbelievable. And that is three Wall Street firms, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, together control, they don't own, control assets of over $22 trillion, and together are the major stockholders in 95% of the S&P corporations. Do you know what power that is? 3 boards of directors having controlling power over 95% of the corporations in America. Third point is media.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have seen in the last couple of months should scare the hell out of everybody who believes in a free press. It starts off with Bezos overriding the Washington Post editorial board, who wanted to support Kamala Harris. Same thing happened with the billionaire in Los Angeles, LA Times.
LA Times. Mm-hmm.
USA Today, I think, clearly bowing down before Election Day to Trump. You're seeing Trump suing the pollster in Iowa. In Iowa, they did a poll, turned out to be wrong. Last I heard, you don't sue somebody because the poll was wrong. Intimidating pollsters, suing ABC for something that Stephanopoulos said. All of that is clearly going to scare the hell out of media and a willingness to stand up to Trump. You say one thing critical, you might be sued. And even if you win, you're going to have to spend a fortune defending yourself. So if you think the media establishment is not worried about that, you're wrong. They are. All right? And then on top of all of that, getting to oligarchy and plutocracy, is you have a campaign system, which I hope everybody who's not living under a rock now understands is broken and corrupt. I don't have the latest numbers. I think it was Musk himself spent, what, $230 million buying?
270, they're saying 275 maybe.
270?
I mean, it keeps going up when we get new reports.
And what, he got a couple of his friends, and Mr. Mercer and others, So it costs a fortune now to run a presidential campaign, but you could fund it. You know, when I ran for president, we had millions and millions of people contributing what amounted to, I think in 2016, $27 a piece. These guys have 3 or 4 people raising more money than we did. When you have millions of people. And again, or add all of that stuff up, income and wealth inequality, concentration of ownership, intimidation of the media, and concentration of ownership in media, and a corrupt campaign finance system. Call it plutocracy, call it oligarchy, call it whatever you want, but it ain't democracy. And let's be clear about that.
Absolutely. And chatting with Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, we saw this kind of grotesque income inequality and obscene amounts of corporations and wealthy people having power in the Gilded Age. And I'm reading a great book, The Iron Empire, all about, Rockefeller, but Vanderbilt and J.P. Morgan and Jay Gould. They owned and sold judges and governors and senators. They bragged about having judges a little more subtly than Elon Musk, to be blunt, but people got wind of it. The result was the progressive era. There was enough of a backlash. I hope we're getting there. What do you think?
I agree with you. And I will tell you, I think, it's a long discussion, but I think in my view, I do not believe that all or most of Trump's supporters are racist and sexist and homophobes and quote unquote deplorable people. I don't believe that for a moment. I think the vast majority of them are working people who understand the system is broken, it is corrupt. And I'll throw out another fact if people are not bored by all the facts we've thrown out already. And this is another astounding fact. Over the last 50 years, 50 years, where there's been an explosion in technology, right? Every worker far more productive than he or she was 50 years ago. Real inflation accounted for wages have remained stagnant. Got it? So people are saying, I'm working my ass off, I'm going nowhere in a hurry. My kid is sleeping in the attic because he or she can't afford a house. And they got, $30,000 or $50,000 in debt. Can't find a good job. I'm worried about the future. And the current system is not working. And Trump comes along and says, hey, you're right. I'm going to smash the entire system. Give me the power. So, I believe the system is broken. Trump's remedies are going to make it even worse. But I think a lot of the anger out there is from a economic and political system which is broken and corrupt in many ways.
I agree. And look, I feel like we need to do something and build an alliance with people we disagree with on other issues. I actually went on Piers Morgan's show yesterday. I've said no in the past, but I went on with some MAGA people. And in the middle of it, I said, because we disagree on everything, I go, can we agree we have to take big money out of politics, that our voice is being diluted? And they all said, yes, there is something there where
you got it.
That's what I'm trying to, and I said, look, we're going to fight it out on every other issue, but on an even playing field. We should agree on every issue. We're Americans, but we should not allow the oligarchs to control our collective destinies as a people. And they're like, I'm with you. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's really my mission, my crusade going forward, is to try to build a coalition.
Look, Dean, they're at the end of the day, and I hope everybody understands it, you're not going to have a president or a Congress responding to the extraordinary needs of the American people when that Congress and president is owned by big money. You don't have to be a genius to figure that out. So real campaign finance reform, and in my view, public funding of elections is where we have got to go. So rather than candidates having to, and it's not just the extreme cases like the presidential candidates getting money from billionaires. I got to tell you that my colleagues, both in the Senate and the House, spend an enormous amount of time. It's no great secret. Every one of them will get up and tell you, I spend 20, 30, 40% of my, week getting on the phone, hustling money. Is that really what we want our elected officials or candidates to be doing?
I agree with you. And perhaps, look, from the federal level, it's going to be hard to see this kind of change in the near future. Maybe it takes state laws to address it. If it's going to be public financing or some kind of penalties for huge donations that are not violation of Citizens United decision. You have to be clever and creative. And I even think follow the playbook of the Republicans, like with their bounty laws on abortion. Same thing with big money. You can still spend your money, but you're going to pay a bounty that people can sue you. I'm spitballing here, but I'm thinking about this. I am so committed to changing this. We can't. Our system ends. We're no longer self-determination as a people.
You're right. You're absolutely. So I just want everybody to know, if you're concerned about healthcare or the economy, climate change, you must be concerned about campaign finance reform. And I'm glad you're working on that, Dean.
And it'll be done by Saturday. I think I'll get it done by then. So Senator, last two things here. One is you wrote an op-ed on H-1B guest worker programs, which really got a lot of press when Elon Musk was fighting with other parts of MAGA. And so what is I know what your point of view is, but can you share what you wrote about why these things are being abused by the big corporations?
Look, one of the reasons that wages have been stagnant in this country for 50 years for working people has to do with disastrous trade policies. Trump is not wrong on that.
Right.
I was one of the leaders when I was over in the House fighting against NAFTA, fighting against PNTR with China, because I understood corporate America wanted the freedom to be able to shut down, turns out, thousands of plants in America, factories here, and pay people starvation wages abroad. Not very hard to understand. Would you rather pay an American worker a decent wage, or a person in China, Mexico, or someplace else a starvation wage? The answer is obvious. That's what they did. And then to add insult to injury, they've come up with a number of guest worker programs, one of which most prominent is H-1B, which the theory is, and there's some justification for the theory, that if a company just cannot find a highly specialized worker, in every company there are 2 or 3 jobs that nobody in the world knows how to do, right? Okay. And if you can't find that in America, my God, you can go out and you can bring somebody from abroad in. Okay, that's the theory. Needless to say, it has been roundly abused so that these companies are not reaching out to American workers, trying to get American workers. They're trying to get people from abroad for a couple of reasons. Number one, they can pay them lower wages. There is a wage scale. They can't pay them anything. But in general, for many of the jobs, they're paying lower than what an American worker would get. Second of all, the way the program H-1B is structured is if you come to my company, you're not coming as a computer programmer, you're working for my company. And if I were to say to the authorities, Dean is not doing a good job, I have to fire him, you're out of the country. That means you are basically an indentured servant. And God forbid somebody in your company wanted to form a union, forget about that.
Right.
But you are tied to my company, and if I have bad things to say about you, you're out of the country. Doesn't make you have a lot of power. So those are the objections.
Sure.
And the goal here, Musk loves the program because he can hire cheaper labor. And you find a lot of working class people, unions, people part of MAGA, who say, you know what, those jobs should go to Americans, and they are right. So we need major reforms in the H-1B program.
We certainly do. And by the way, I'm almost an indentured servant for SiriusXM. That's how it works here. It's the way it works. So, very last thing. Today was the beautiful memorial for the late Jimmy Carter. I was watching a lot of it on TV. In your view, what is the legacy of the late President Jimmy Carter?
I would say, you can talk about his policies, and what came up today is this is a guy who grew up in rural Georgia. I learned today that most of the people in the county that he lived in were Black. He was a minority. And he lived in a segregated South. And, as governor of Georgia, fought to desegregate the state and for racial justice. That's a big deal when you come from a highly segregated area. As president, he put more women and minorities into positions of authority than any president before him. But I think if you go deeper into the Jimmy Carter legacy, it really is, I don't know that you're going to see future presidents like him. He was a peanut farmer. He grew up in a, poor home. He was a very down-to-earth, decent, religious guy. And he taught Sunday school, I think, every Sunday of his life, and believed, that's what came up today at the very beautiful funeral, believed that you should do unto others as they would do unto you. And he, post his presidential time, he worked hard to eradicate diseases successfully. in Africa and elsewhere. So I think what you can say about him is he was the best of America in the sense of, you could disagree with him on this or that policy, but he was a very decent, honest, good person.
He certainly was, and that was the takeaway from that. And also, one thing that also reminds me of you is that he's talked about Palestinian humanity, and he did it in 2006. He did it before, but in his book, and he knew he would be attacked for it.
Yep.
And he still, and you could agree with his point of view or not, but the idea of having the courage to stand up for human rights, whatever they are, even if you take a backlash, is some of the legacy from him. Because
You're right.
he in 2006, he talked about Palestinian humanity and what they were going through in the West Bank on the national level. It sparked a debate that I had not heard before on
You're
that
absolutely-
level. And
at
also,
that particular point, that was enormously courageous.
Yep.
You're right. He was a courageous man who believed in human rights in every country in the world.
he's definitely in. Well, Senator Sanders, nice seeing you, my friend. We'll continue the fight against the oligarchy and the plutocrats. We're going to win. We got to win. We have no
All
choice.
right.
All right.
Good.
Take care, Senator.
All right, Dean. Keep up the great work. Take
You
care.
too.